Listen.
Mary Gardner.
Since I became Attorney General, I have made clear that the Department of Justice will speak through its court filings and its work. Just now, the Justice Department has filed a motion in the Southern District of Florida to unseal a search warrant and property receipt relating to a court-approved search that the FBI conducted earlier this week. That search was of premises located in Florida belonging to the former president. The department did not make any public statements on the day of the search. The former president publicly confirmed the search that evening, as is his right. Copies of both the warrant and the FBI property receipt were provided on the day of the search to the former president's counsel, who was on site during the search. The search warrant was authorized by a federal court upon the required finding of probable cause. The property receipt is a document that federal law requires law enforcement agents to leave with the property owner. The department filed the motion to make public the warrant and receipt in light of the former president's public confirmation of the search, the surrounding circumstances, and the substantial public interest in this matter. Faithful adherence to the rule of law is the bedrock principle of the Justice Department and of our democracy. Upholding the rule of law means applying the law evenly, without fear or favor. Under my watch, that is precisely what the Justice Department is doing. All Americans are entitled to the even-handed application of the law, to due process of the law, and to the presumption of innocence. Much of our work is by necessity conducted out of the public eye. We do that to protect the constitutional rights of all Americans and to protect the integrity of our investigations. Federal law, long-standing department rules, and our ethical obligations prevent me from providing further details as to the basis of the search at this time. There are, however, certain points I want you to know. First, I personally approved the decision to seek a search warrant in this matter. Second, the department does not take such a decision lightly. Where possible, it is standard practice to seek less intrusive means as an alternative to a search and to narrowly scope any search that is undertaken. Third, let me address recent unfounded attacks on the professionalism of the FBI and Justice Department agents and prosecutors. I will not stand by silently when their integrity is unfairly attacked. The men and women of the FBI and the Justice Department are dedicated, patriotic public servants. Every day, they protect the American people from violent crime, terrorism, and other threats to their safety, while safeguarding our civil rights. They do so at great personal sacrifice and risk to themselves. I am honored to work alongside them. This is all I can say right now. More information will be made available in the appropriate way and at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Mr. Attorney General, the former president of FBI agents.
Thank you all for your questions. But as I said, this is all I can say at this time.
So I just got handed the motion to unseal the search warrant. Here's the motion. To unseal the search warrant and the property receipt that was filed by the Department of Justice in South Florida. That is what Attorney General Merrick Garland started off this news conference. So we will get that information, what the search warrant said and what the property receipt lists. He also said, and let's underscore this, that he personally approved this search warrant. All indications among everybody that knows how the Justice Department works were that he would have needed to do it because it would be so sensitive. He confirmed that right there. He personally approved the search warrant. He said the Department of Justice doesn't take it lightly, and he made a point of saying he also will not stand by when the FBI and the Justice Department is attacked. that the integrity of his officers and his agents is paramount, and that they do a big, hard job, my words, not his, of protecting the American public every single day. So Chuck Rosenberg, you are my man on all things explanatory. Explain again to our audience what would be contained within the search warrant and what information we would get from the property receipt.
Sure, Katie. So 3 parts to a search warrant, generally speaking. The affidavit, which lays out the government's case for probable cause, which the judge reviews. The search warrant itself, which is typically a 1-page order, and the inventory that you alluded to, or the list of items that were seized. As the Attorney General said, that list of items that are seized, the inventory, has to be left at the home, and so Mr. Trump presumably has it. The 1-page warrant, the order, would be presented at the home at the time of the search, so Mr. Trump presumably has it. The thing we're all waiting for is the affidavit, the underlying probable cause statement, and that can run many, many pages. So the document you just held up in front of the camera, the motion to unseal, is a motion by the government, by the United States Attorney, to ask the court to make that document public, meaning there's no longer a legitimate law enforcement purpose for keeping it sealed. Whatever is in that document, we will soon see. Whatever's in the inventory, we will soon see. We can stop guessing and we'll know exactly what it is they're looking for, what crime they believe was committed, why they thought they would find evidence of that crime in the place they were searching, and the things they took as a result of the search warrant. So the other part of this, Katie, I am not at all surprised, and I'm sure Neil is not surprised, and Andrew's not surprised, and any of us who grew up in the Department of Justice are not surprised that the Attorney General himself had personally approved this search warrant, this law enforcement action. It would have been utterly shocking had he not. It would have been a massive dereliction of duty. And, you know, I've been saying on television for a few days now, I think you can characterize it as my blathering, that it had to be the case. And so that is not at all surprising. Third thing, I'm very glad that the Attorney General spoke up on behalf of the men and women of the FBI. Like Andrew, I worked there. I had 2 stints there. I consider it a privilege of a lifetime, professionally and personally, to have been part of that great organization. And watching unfounded attacks on those men and women is utterly revolting. The notion that the FBI would have planted evidence at Mar-a-Lago is a sickening lie. And so I'm glad the Attorney General spoke up on behalf of these men and women. It was overdue, in my view.
He said, "I will not stand by silently when their integrity is unfairly attacked. The men and women of the FBI and the Justice Department are dedicated, patriotic public." All right, so there are a couple things in this motion to unseal the search warrant and the property list. The warrant was signed and approved on August 5th, 2022. I'm not sure if we knew that before this. My second question to you, Chuck, was going to be, when are we going to know? When are we going to get this stuff unsealed? When will we get this information? And I know you're saying soon, but there's this last paragraph, and I'll read it. In this motion, it says, "This matter plainly concerns public officials or public concerns as it involves a law enforcement action taken at the property of the 45th President of the United States. The public's clear and powerful interest in understanding what occurred under these circumstances weighs heavily in favor of unsealing. That said, the former president should have an opportunity to respond to this motion and lodge objections, including with regards to any legitimate privacy interests or the potential for injury if these materials are made public. To that end, the government will furnish counsel for the former president with a copy of this motion." So what's your sense of timeline, Chuck?
Yeah, so that shifts it slightly, Katie. And by the way, I think that's a very sensible thing for the government to do. In the ordinary case, and I've done a whole bunch of ordinary cases, the government files a motion with the court to unseal the search warrant or the arrest warrant, the affidavit, whatever the documents may be, and the judge signs it. And so in the ordinary case, it would probably happen by close of business today. This is not the ordinary case. And so I think it's absolutely appropriate for the government to invite counsel for Mr. Trump to weigh in. Now, there is still a very, very strong predisposition in the law for documents to be made public because of the public interest in knowing what the contents are. So the judge may invite a brief from Mr. Trump's lawyers. He may hold a hearing. None of that would be inappropriate. To your primary question, it'll slow things down a bit. But this is the first step in getting the affidavit. And again, we ought to be careful in the interim of conjecture, of guessing, and of speculating of what's in it. We know certain things about search warrants, so we can tell you how they...
Sorry about that. Having a fit right now with sneezing. Having a sneezing fit. Allergies.
I'll tell you, Juan Antonio Gonzalez, the United States Attorney, also J.I. Bratt, Chief Counterintelligence and Export Control Section, National Security Division. Do you know those two gentlemen? Does it indicate anything to you that they are signees? Andrew's not with us. I don't see him. Oh, no, he is. Oh, you're nodding. You're nodding. I don't know why my executive producer got in my ear there. Tell me.
So Jay Bratt is the person who, by all accounts, was down in Mar-a-Lago in June. He's a career employee of the National Security Division, and the other gentleman is at the local U.S. Attorney's Office. So this makes total sense that they would be signing it. I wouldn't read too much more into it. I think to follow up on what Joyce said, this is really Merrick Garland calling Donald Trump's bluff, because this basically says, you know what, if you think that this violates your civil liberties, if you've got a concern about privacy, you can oppose this motion, but we are willing to make all of this public with the court approval, and they can see for themselves that everything was done right here. And now the ball's in your court to say, oh, wait, I want to hide this from the American public. The other thing I think that's worth noting that Merrick Garland said is he made an allusion to the fact that they did try other means before they went to resorting to a search warrant. He said typically that is what you would do, and I think that's his way of signaling that I think when we actually do get the unsealing of this material, that we're going to see that the Justice Department, as is Merrick Garland's want, has probably gone very carefully in trying to do this through means that were less draconian than a search warrant.
Neil, the Attorney General came out and he was very judicious. He was careful about what he was saying. You could tell that he was reading from a teleprompter, and he didn't reveal all that much. He's now leaving it to the courts to reveal what's in the search warrant and what's in the inventory list. And as we've been talking about, he's now putting the ball in Donald Trump's court to say, hey, no, we don't want anyone to know about what is there, calling Donald Trump's bluff, essentially, as we've been saying. What did you make of what we saw there from the Attorney General?
That was a true Attorney General of the United States, Katie, acting like the way attorneys general typically have throughout our history, except for, a 4-year blip recently. It's such a contrast with, that Donald Trump. Just take, for example, Merrick Garland's 3 points today. 1, the importance of the rule of law as the fabric of our society. 2, the importance of the even-handed application of the law. And 3rd, the presumption of innocence, even for the former president in the context of this search. All 3 of those are kind of hallmarks of the department at its best. It's not surprising to me to see Garland doing it, nor is it surprising to me for him to file this motion to unseal, but to say, look, Donald Trump, this implicates some of your interests, even though strictly speaking, we don't have to tell the court to go and seek out your views. We're going to do so here and be particularly solicitous of getting that information to the court, and so it'll be briefed up. And that is going to delay things, no doubt. But there is a way in which this is a key chess move as well. It's the right thing to do, but it's a key chess move because for the last 48 hours, Donald Trump has been blathering on, along with the Republican Party, saying this search is abusive and so on. And we've all been saying, look, you've got the warrant, release it to us. And now Garland's figured out a separate way to get that released, which is to go to the court and do so and force Trump to take a position to say, oh, no, now this should actually be maintained confidentially and quietly and away from the eyes of the American public. So I think this was a brilliant press conference and the right thing to do in this extraordinary circumstance. The last thing I do want to say is I do think Andrew is right in saying the one piece of detail we really got here, besides that the Attorney General personally approved the search, was that they had tried less intrusive means. That looks like a subpoena requesting the documents. They couldn't get the documents that way, so they had to take the extraordinary step, I think for the first time in American history, of going into a former president's home with a search warrant to get the material.
And the New York Times reported today that there was a subpoena. NBC News confirmed that as well. Again, this confirmed triply now, it seems, from Attorney General Merrick Garland. Josh Dawsey, I know you are in touch with folks in Donald Trump's world. Any reaction to them from them so far?
Well, not since the presser, but I do know that there's been a change in the opinion of some of the Trump advisors I've spoken to this week. The initial observation seemed to be that they thought this was an overreach by the Department of Justice, and they thought that it would actually play to his favor to some degree. But there seems to be, over the last couple of days, a realization that they may not have known all the things he took, and he may have taken some things that could be problematic. I mean, you have, Maggie Haberman reported this earlier, and this is true, you have some folks that are around the former president telling GOP leaders, kind of dial back with stuff on the FBI and the DOJ. This could get rockier in the coming days. So there certainly seems to have been a sea change in the past couple of days in Trump world. One of the things, Katie, is that a lot of the folks around the former president don't really know what was in those boxes. I mean, there are some aides who do. Some of them have been questioned by the FBI, but a lot of his current folks aren't really sure what he took. And I guess either they don't want to ask him, they haven't asked him. I don't know what he's told them, but there really is some consternation because there seems to be in Trump world not a full sense, at least among the folks I've talked to, and I think some of my competitors, that they really know all the facts here.
All right, Jake Sherman, a lot of the people that have been rallying to the president's defense are Republican lawmakers, being pretty forceful about what they've, to put it nicely, said is an overreach, but they've used much stronger terms. In some cases, likening the Department of Justice and the FBI to third world countries. Marco Rubio did that. What might their reaction be now?
Katie, this morning, Steve Scalise went on Fox News and said, and Fox News pushed back to their credit, but said that this is a rogue FBI operation, that the FBI is out of control, essentially, and sharply criticized the FBI. In the overarching story of the House Republican leadership, which, by the way, stands on the precipice of winning the House majority, but also stands firmly under any circumstance with Donald Trump. This is going to be, if you believe, and we, again, having no idea what was in the search warrant or the property receipt, if he improperly, as Josh and others and Maggie have reported, if he improperly took sensitive documents from the White House, and yet you have the Republican leadership suggesting that it is that one of the chief law enforcement agency in the United States has gone rogue, it's going to be a horribly embarrassing incident to the House Republican leadership. And remember, this was a long time ago, but when the last time the Republicans took the majority, they said they were going to be the sober leaders in this country. We're very far from that. And maybe this will teach them a lesson, Katie, which is that, and if they haven't learned this by now, I don't know, maybe they will not, but maybe it'll teach them the lesson that Trump isn't honest, because I know people who have had dinner. The Republican Study Committee had dinner with Donald Trump at Bedminster, and I talked to a couple of the people that had dinner with him, and they said he doesn't seem worried. He thinks it's completely bogus, and he's fine, and he said it's no big deal. We're going to see whether that's true or not quite soon. And based on that press conference, it certainly doesn't seem, and again, I'm not a lawyer, this is conjecture, but it does not seem as if Merrick Garland would have motioned for this to become public if they just went in, got nothing, and moved on. So, it could be a quite embarrassing incident for the House Republican leadership, which, by the way, the House comes in tomorrow. There's going to be plenty of opportunities to ask these lawmakers this question.
In other words, it's reached a point that it's going to be embarrassing for one or the other. It's going to either be embarrassing for the Republican Party, or it's going to be embarrassing for the DOJ or the prosecuting attorneys in all this. since we've come out with all this internet and high-tech satellite equipment and living in the age that we're living in right now, this has put on a brand new concept pertaining to what is lawful and what is not lawful, pertaining to it being unlawful, towards public relations, dealing with a highly sensitive, high-ranking case like this. It puts it under a completely different magnifying glass, because it's one thing to get the information that they discovered, let's say 72 hours ago or a week or even 2 weeks ago, that now they've figured out what they're going to say, how they're going to say it, et cetera, towards revealing what went on. But whenever you're dealing with what we're dealing with today on a second by second, minute by minute, hour by hour unfolding situations like this, it puts on a brand new perspective whenever it comes to public relations and what should and shouldn't be given to the public during the time that all this is going on. There's no doubt, whenever an investigation is going on, it shouldn't be advertised that it was an investigation going on. I think they messed up right there. They never should have said that there was an ongoing investigation on Donald J. Trump, because that's almost like spilling the beans on yourself. That's one of the benefits pertaining to law enforcement in this regard, that the element of surprise is always for the government's upper hand. And whenever I say the government upper hand, I'm talking about the DOJ or the prosecuting attorneys. That element has always been there for their own personal benefit. Because if it wasn't there, I mean, if you warn somebody ahead of time, hey, we think you got drugs and we're fixing to come down there with a warrant and search your place, well, guess what they're going to do with the drugs? They're going to flush them. They're going to get rid of them. So you can't put the investigation over the interest of a surprise tactic, because that is part of their job, is supposed to do these things secretly or quietly. And whenever they made the announcement that Donald J. Trump was on their radar screen, I think that right there was a big no-no. Because once more, you're starting to advise the people that you are possibly going to go after towards burning. You're giving them a heads up. It's a twisted saga of various public relation scenarios that are happening right now that has actually compassed the days of our life, or as the world turns, or the edge of night. Any of those soul poplars that we are familiar with here in America, this has compassed any and all that put together at the same time.
Comments, I imagine, like we used to see when Donald Trump was in office, or a lot of scurrying off down the hall.
I'll put it this way. My grandmother sat and cried over watching the days of our lives over somebody dying, not identifying during the frame of thought that she was watching the movie that what she was watching was in fact a movie versus it being reality. If she was glued to her seat then, could you only imagine how glued to her seat that she would be today? Because this isn't a show, or it's not supposed to be. It's not supposed to be the days of our lives or as the world turns. This is all factual, or it's supposed to be factual. So by people getting in a roar, I can understand the reason why. I really can.
down the hallways and pretending like they didn't hear. What about Republican leadership in the Senate? Mitch McConnell took 24 hours to comment on this initially. What's your expectation on their reaction?
Well, McConnell, if you notice, Katie, said just Merrick Garland should address this, and Merrick Garland has now addressed this. So he has not said this is a rogue operation. Mitch McConnell wants literally nothing to do. His statement about this raid or about this search did not even include Donald Trump's name, Katie. So he will have no problem if the evidence.
The element of surprise. You have blowed your case. It's the same thing that happened with the ATF investigating the Davidians down at Mount Carmel. They was blowed pertaining to their plans of being spoiled, and before they ever got a chance to come in, they was already gunning for them because they knew that they was coming. Once that investigator figured out, after getting the warrant from the federal judge, he should have backed off and said, you know what, the element of surprise is blowed here. We're going to have to do something else or not do it at all or wait for another day. Because that's what they got for their advantage, is the element of surprise. And just so happens whenever they landed the helicopters in the Davidian yard, they didn't have that element of surprise because they was already cocked, loaded, and waiting on them. It's very unprofessional in what's actually going on here, because you're not supposed to reveal things, even though Donald Trump is such of an open public figure. You're not supposed to reveal things because you diminish the department, you diminish the bureau, in them not having the upper hand towards doing what they need to do. So, this isn't just unprecedented. This is unprofessionalism in regards towards what's going on here. So, is this some sort of a plot? Is this the days of our lives that we're watching? Has this already been looked at and dialed into, and everybody knows their scripts towards who's going to say what and when they're going to say it?
And his
makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Justice Department under his leadership. He's tried to be a steady hand who's restored the rule of law, who's done the right thing, but has also done the right thing in the right way so that Americans can have confidence in the justice system. He's taken this fairly unusual step of speaking to the country today, but he did so in a very measured way. Again, not talking about the substance of the investigation very much, talking more about the procedure and the way DOJ conducts itself, but committing to unseal, it sounds to me, Katie, like the portions of the search warrant that would have been left at Mar-a-Lago for Trump. So it's not entirely clear to me, having had a chance to review some of the paperwork, that we'll see the entirety of DOJ's evidence, but we will understand what they went there for. We will understand what they came away with. And of course, if that's highly classified, even compartmentalized national security information, it's likely that the description will be somewhat obscure, because revealing in too much detail what was seized would defeat the purpose of protecting that national security information. But the reality is, we classify information in this country when its release would damage the national security. And if unsealing these documents conveys to Americans that Mr. Trump was willing to hold on to this information even when it was requested from him, even, I suspect, when DOJ pointed out that he wasn't entitled to it and that his continued possession violated the law, revealing that entire train of events and talking about the type of damage that could have been done, even in vague terms, could perhaps finally break through with some folks who have held on to Trump for this long.
And then again, it could be that the information that Donald Trump had, providing that he's got it, could have been so crucial that he felt like that this information needed or had to be given over to the general public, and identifying the fact that there was a government cover-up in regards towards the information that obviously somebody is concerned about towards doing what they're doing right here. I don't know. I mean, it's basically boils down to our government, one agency investigating another agency, but it also boils down to the fact of trust, that whenever the American people can no longer trust whichever agency, and you would think Secret Service is Secret Service, regardless whether it was Secret Service taking care of the Clintons, Secret Service taking care of the Obamas, Secret Service taking care of Mr. Carter, Secret Service taking care of Donald Trump, or Secret Service that's in power right now towards taking care of the President Biden. You would think that all Secret Services would all be on the same page. So I smell a rat in the woodpile in regards towards how the Secret Service automatically deleted all their files the day of January the 6th, and they acted like that it was some sort of a pre-planned deal that they was supposed to have turned in their phones and got all new phones. It smells fishy to me that that we got a security breach from within our department, our security department, that now one is questioning the other towards its authenticity and towards its rights and towards the benefit of the will of the people. It sounds to me like it's becoming very, very chaotic. And if you'd have just done the right thing, going all the way back into the late 80s, honesty is the best policy, and not cover up a bunch of stuff from the American people, if you would have just done the right thing, I truly believe that we would not be staring down the barrels of all this curiosity and questioning who to trust and what to trust, if to trust anybody. I truly believe that we would not be here where we're at right now if things would have been handled properly in the latter part of Ronald Reagan's administration, as well as Bush, Mr. Senior Bush. There's no doubt, even Ford said that we shouldn't have went to war with the people over in Afghanistan. He was against it, or maybe it wasn't the war in Afghanistan, maybe it was the Iraqi war of Saddam Hussein, but he was against that. He didn't want that information released until after he was dead, because he basically knows his own security system inside and out towards how dishonest that they are with the American people. And now the genie's been let out of the bottle. The toothpaste is out of the tube, and they can't put it back in. In addition to all the other problems that's going on towards a 20-year war that we spent $2 trillion on, and when we walked away 11 days later, that blowed up in the White House's face. In addition to all the other stuff that has consequently got us where we are right now, I'm telling you, COVID has accelerated this stuff. I think COVID has accelerated possibly even the melting of the icebergs. COVID has accelerated a lot of things to the top of the surface that at one time we just thought that we had it on automatic pilot or on cruise control. And now the people in this great nation are realizing that, my God, it is on automatic cruise, but no, isn't nobody watching the cruise? In other words, it's been piloting itself for the past 30 plus years. And now we're where we're at today. It don't get much any hairier or dicier than this.
Chuck, to go back to what we were talking about earlier, and what
It's an abomination. It's abomination within our own department towards a breach in our department of them questioning each other's authenticity and each other's intent towards what's actually happening here. And I don't know if they're going to get to the bottom of this or not. Apparently it needs to be to the bottom, because I mean now it's got everybody's suspicion up towards not knowing what this is all about. And you know, let's go to another channel here and see if they're talking about the same thing and putting a different spin on it here. Let's see what's going on here on CNN.
And we were proud of it. And what other people would say afterwards, we didn't know, of course, but we were proud of it, and that's the way we had always worked. Well,
this is on something else. This is on a rock and roll group.
Joe, your reaction to what you just heard from Merrick Garland, what stood out?
Well, Martha, I think the appearance actually just made things worse for the White House. Again, they somehow insist that they weren't given a heads up about the raid, right, which is very hard to believe. And then they weren't even given a heads up today that the Attorney General will be making a statement today. I mean, if you actually believe that, you believe that we're, currently experiencing zero inflation, right? And if this ends up being about documents from the National Archives, it will go down as the biggest debacle we've seen out of this administration since almost 1 year ago, and that disastrous pullout from Afghanistan. After the statement from Garland, we clearly have more questions than answers at this point, to echo what Shannon and Brett were saying earlier. That was 4 minutes and 40 seconds from the Attorney General, and it was a nothing burger, basically with no bun. And the questions are many, right? And why did it take 72 hours for the Attorney General to make a comment regarding a raid that has completely and totally dominated our news cycle since the beginning of the week? Why was he 40 minutes late to read a pre-written statement? Why didn't he take any questions? I mean, if I could ask any questions, it would be, why was this raid carried out in the high-profile manner it was? Dozens of agents, flashing lights that you see on your screen there, when the former president was fully cooperating to this point, sir. And were the documents that were sought, were they needed for the National Archives? If so, how do you justify not obtaining them in a more low-key manner? But what stood out to me most, to answer your question very belatedly, is that he had to point out that he personally approved this raid. You would think, of course, that would be the case, but Newsweek had reported that he did not approve it. So again, more answers, or more questions than answers right now, Martha.
I think there is a little bit of, he's saying I authorized the raid. He's not saying they called me right before they went in and I said, okay, go. I think that's sort of the, the nuance there. I'm not sure it matters to most people, and you're right. We've heard from a number of former high-ranking officials at the Department of Justice that it would be highly unusual for Merrick Garland not to be the person who made that call. And he said that, yes, indeed, he did approve this search warrant. Clay, the other thing that stands out, and Joe just touched on it, that it was not possible to go in any other way than the way that they went in, which suggests that they had hit roadblocks, that they needed something that was in there, and they better be able to substantiate that claim, that it wasn't possible to handle the former president of the United States home in any other way.
Yeah, Martha, I think that's the key here. This is unprecedented, and I don't think we should miss what's really going on here. We have the Attorney General of the president that just ran against the former president and might be running again against him in 2 years, investigating that president. How in the world has Merrick Garland not recused himself from this investigation? To me, Joe hit on it. I think the most significant part of this press conference was Merrick Garland let us know that he is personally shepherding this investigation by and large, that it is under his authority. Why in the world is there not an independent counsel here? Why is Merrick Garland, who is Joe Biden's hand-picked attorney general, able to investigate both the past and potentially future person who's going to be running against Joe Biden?
Exactly. It's unprofessional. I've never seen anything so messed up in my entire freaking life.
Biden. This is madness. There's no precedent. This is me putting my lawyer hat on here, Martha. There is no precedent in American political history for an attorney general of an opposing party to be investigating potentially the man who is going to be running against his boss. That is a clear direction of bias. It's a clear indication of impropriety. I am flabbergasted that more people aren't discussing this and asking. Joe said his question would be, why did you have to go in this way? I think that's a very fair question. Why are you helming up this investigation is, to me, the single most important question that Merrick Garland should have to answer.
Yeah,
I asked the exact same question, not only about this, but I also asked it about whenever I had called Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, pertaining to their park on the 20th year anniversary, towards me possibly going to go down there and visit. I was very upfront towards who I was. I didn't try to pull no strings. I said, give me a call. I gave them my telephone number. And instead of them giving me a call back, they wind up sending the sheriff's deputy out here. Wow. The sheriff's deputy? In other words, they wanted to make it official by them warning me and telling me that if I come back to Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, I can expect severe consequences. Okay. So you had to go about doing it in a big, big way. Wasn't that something? Especially whenever the very people working in the very same county tried to burn me and destroy me over me saying something to a teller working in a convenience store at about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and then them turning around and trying to get me for me being some sort of a homegrown terrorist right here in my own county. And yes, Tommy Moore and the judicial system here was a part of all of that, including the attorney that I had to hire, which was Benjamin Dempsey, that I don't think is no longer practicing law, but at one time or another, his law enforcement potentials was grounded by, I guess, the lieutenant governor or the governor or somebody here in Tennessee, towards him not being able to practice law for about a year or two. In other words, they put him on probation. So, I mean, we got the pot calling the kettle black. We've got all this unprofessionalism going on. And now it's only riled up the citizens of this great country, America. And now they're realizing that, my God, this is just a puppet show, isn't it? This is just another Days of Our Lives. This is just another As the World Turns. This is not how professional people is supposed to respond and react to situations like this. Like I'm like that news reporter. How come there isn't a special counsel that's guiding through all this, rather than it just be flushed out to the American people and the world the way that it is? Wow. I realize that we live in an instant society as far as the internet and Facebook and YouTube and all these other social media platforms and all this other stuff. I realize that we live in that era right now, but we wasn't expecting this. This kind of goes beyond our wildest Thank you for listening. Good luck to all of us. Coming from the Windmill Ministries missions here at 291 Thompson Road, Sharon, Tennessee, zip code 38255. We hope that you can make heads or tails out of any of this before it winds up getting in the light towards people not understanding or being able to identify the who's the who, the right, the wrong, the who, the what, the when, and the why, etc., etc. Good luck to all of us, and shalom.